right, I will call to order the Monday, March 1st, 2021 meeting of the Stoughton Select Board. This meeting is being conducted by remote participation pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, as well as the March 23rd, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people who may gather in place. This meeting is being recorded by Stoughton Media Access Corporation and will be available for future broadcast as well as being broadcast live. We have a Google Meets link for which folks can participate via video conference as well as conference. So with that, if you are able, I would ask that you please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance as I pull up the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag of the United States of America, and to the
republic for which we stand,
one nation,
under God, with liberty and justice
for all.
And just a little housekeeping, I would ask folks to please mute themselves if they're speaking. We're getting a lot of feedback here, and there's a lot of people on the meeting, so please mute yourself. And we will ask citizens request to unmute as well as participating in discussion as a member of the select board. So I apologize for a little bit of confusion with the link. Because of the events that happened at our meeting last week, we've had to instill a change in the policy of how we post the meeting on the town website's calendar. I had some discussions with the town manager and the IT director to figure out a way to make the meetings more secure. And we believe that by posting the live link on the town calendar, enabled some people who use web crawling and so on to find the link and then compromise the meeting as we experienced last Tuesday. So when we discussed the protocols moving forward, we decided that only posting the phone number and then having the stamped in agenda as a PDF, a static PDF, as you so you will, would prevent the sort of web crawlers from finding a hyperlink or live link. Unfortunately, after that discussion, the meeting was posted last Thursday and the live link was put up on the town calendar. And so I didn't want this meeting to be compromised. So we adjusted to create a new link to put on the most recent amended agenda to prevent the Zoom bombing or what have you from happening again. And so now moving forward, the town calendar, that front page of the website, will have a PDF link to the agenda, which has the static printed version of the link and the phone number. And then if folks need access to the link for some reason, they can always email the board or email double blank and we can get you the hyperlink and assist you with that process. But it will be printed on the agenda that is scanned in as a PDF that's accessible, but it will not be hyperlinked on the town calendar. So in order to prevent this meeting from being compromised, like the last one, I had to revise the link. And so that's the reason for the confusion. And hopefully moving forward, the links won't get posted again on the front page of the website. So I think that should hopefully cover it. First item on our agenda tonight is citizens' requests. If a citizen would like to make a request, please use the raise hand function or unmute yourself and I will. Mr. David Lurie.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. Dave Lurie, Precinct 6. I just thought I heard you say that you'd go to the calendar to find the agenda for that night's meeting. The habit that most people have, as we just experienced, are going to the agendas section of the Stoughton.org website. And that's where we find the most up-to-date. It's a repository of all your agendas. And the most current one is posted there. So we all think that would also have a PDF that would prevent any web crawlers or whatever else. Can it also be posted there so that everybody's used to getting the agenda in the same place?
I didn't mean that that we wouldn't be posting where we post all the time. I just meant that the one that's posted on the calendar will not have the live link. It will just be the static PDF, just like the static PDF in all of those other locations where agendas are posted on the board's website, on the agenda website, on the bulletin board at town hall, all those locations. So the only change is that we won't have the live link listed as text when you click on the calendar event. So we believe that's where it's been pulled.
Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you. As long as it's in the same place, thank you.
Any other citizens' requests? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'll move on to select board comments. Ms. Roberts?
None at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. McCrisky?
Nothing, ma'am.
Mr. Regan?
Just very briefly, last week I saw that the new round of community compacts has been opened by the governor and lieutenant governor's office. Community compacts are a program to assist local governments from the state with developing best practices. One of the areas in the defined best practices available is in financial planning for capital budgeting. And given the number of capital projects that face us, all of them need to get done. That capital planning for all of them town-wide, I think, is an important thing. I would ask the manager if she would look into and report back as soon as she can, registering for that program. And I've had some conversations with some folks on the finance committee on this topic, and I raised a suggestion as to whether they thought participating by the town in such a program would be beneficial for everybody, just before I asked this of us to get some feedback. And it was thought to be a very useful thing for us to do. And as I understand the program, it would help us integrate all of the capital programming that we need to anticipate, so that we know or can know longer ahead of time than I think we have what we need to be able to fund. So I can send you a link for that, but I think you'll find it on the Community Compacts website through the governor's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Regan. I don't have any comments. Mr. Cavey?
I'll just take this opportunity to sort of preemptively mention the fact that I'll be recusing myself for item 5 on the agenda, which is the town clerk appointment. One of the candidates' spouse is running against me in an upcoming election, and I've spoken with members of people from the State Ethics Commission, and they agree that this is the best course of action. So thank you very much. You'll see me again at the consent agenda.
All right. All right, and as I said, I don't have any additional comments, so we'll go on to town manager comments.
Nothing for me tonight.
All right. That brings us to item 5 on our agenda, which is the town clerk appointment. So we can do a review of the interviews that we conducted last week for our 3 finalist candidates, Stephanie Carrara, David Golden, and Reggie Medeiros-Kowalski, and also to deliberate and vote on the appointment. So with that, I will turn over to members of the board for any discussion on the interviews, unless the board members are prepared to make any motions at this time or additional discussion. Ms. Roberts?
I'm ready to make a nomination, Madam Chair.
Okay, would anybody like to review or discuss the interviews before we entertain nominations? Okay, so in order to kind of lay the groundwork for how this process will work, because there's 4 of us and the voting process could get, Joyce, you're waving your hand. Did you want to make a comment on?
There we go. I'm sorry, for some reason I couldn't get my mic turned on.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess if we just want to jump in and make nominations, but I believe that really, and I guess I would have some comments if we're going to make nominations, and just questions about a couple of things. But so, am I the only one that wants to ask any questions? I guess I don't see anybody else. So the questions I have is, and I think it's just typos, but when we look at the information that was provided to us by the assessors, we scored at a 1 through 5, and I did see on another document there's a 1 through 5, but on these candidate reviews, I see a 1 through 4. And I was just questioning whether that is just a typo, that the 5 was left out, because it seems that they scored 1 through 5, but there's only 1 through 4 listed on.
I'm sorry, you broke up there at the end. What was that?
Oh, yeah, somebody's got some talking in the background. I don't know if we can mute everybody at this point until they have their hands up. I was talking about the screening interviews that we got for each of the candidates. And on that document, there is a 1 through 4 in the top left corner. And I know that we scored on that same document 1 through 5. And I'm just asking if it's a typo that the 1 through 5 was left out on the screening interview results for each of the candidates. Because I do see a 1 through 5 scoring, but I don't see the 5. So I don't know if that's just a typo.
Yeah, I would believe that's a typo because they did consistently score 1 through 5. And Mary Beth had indicated that it was the same kind of scoring rubric process for our interview range as well. But again, the only kind of criteria she indicated for the screening part of the screening for the finalists was that they were to receive a 75 or higher to basically advance to the final round. So if someone in this, of the 4, candidates that they screened, if someone scored, say, like a 50 after the rating, then they wouldn't have advanced that person to us. And as we discussed last week, there was a 4th candidate who did screen high enough on this, but for other circumstances that prevented them from forwarding the individuals, relocation, and it didn't seem like they actually wanted to work for the town of Stoughton. So, and as we discussed, I would just, I passed this information on because it was requested and provided. So I don't know if that, that can be taken into each board member's, they can consider it themselves how they want to, but other than that, it's just kind of FYI information.
Okay, because when I'm looking at this, and it's obvious it was all written, these 3 documents, in the same handwriting, and different notes and personal comments regarding, I would imagine, regarding each of these candidates, that I just thought we would have got something a little bit more formal. I mean, this is obviously written by one person.
Yeah, this was just
the scores are there.
Yeah, these are just Mary Beth's notes from her screening. It was requested last week to see that if you're gonna, you wanted all the information. So this is what she gave me.
Okay, I just thought we would have got something a little bit more formal. That's all.
I mean, I think the screening committee's job was to screen out and send us the finalists, which they did. So she explained the process, and they met the minimum score to forward on. So I'm not sure we needed much else. These are just their personal notes that she took, and this was requested of us last week, so that's why I sent it over.
No, I understand. We spent a lot of money on this study, and I just thought, I kind of expected something a little bit more than just handwritten notes. I would have, expected a formal written report. And I don't know if it would have been, advantageous for us to know who the screeners were at the time, but it seems like, we hired them. We should know who they are. We should know who's making these decisions on. So it's just, I may be alone on this, but I wanted to get that out because I just
she
don't
told
like
us
the process, right?
She told us they were a former town manager and a clerk, as was requested by you, Mr. McCrisky. You wanted some outside folks who would be objective, so that's who she put together for the screening committee. Non-Stoughton people was, I think, how we phrased it. In terms of written reports, they did the written analysis of the department in advance. They did the written job description. She did the written scripts, both for the screening process and for our finalist script, which, we had some input on. They did assess the technical assessment, so 2 writing assessments, and Mary Beth attended many of our meetings and presented this information to us. So I don't know what else. If you want a summary report, I'm sure I could get one if you want a summary written report. If not, I'm not sure what else what we could provide.
No, this has gone on, in my opinion, too long to start with, so I'm going to continue to move forward tonight. Thank you.
Okay. there's no further comments or questions about the interviews. There are 4 members of the board tonight that will be voting on this, as Mr. Cavey has recused himself. So what I would do is entertain motions for nominations for the appointment to the position. And depending on nominations and seconds of those nominations, we will then have discussion, and then I will go through the board members and ask who they're voting for, if they're prepared to do so. So I did talk with council about this process to ensure that, you know, everything is in order. If there is a circumstance in which there's a vote, you know, 2 in favor of a candidate, 1 in favor of another candidate, and 1 in favor of a third candidate, the candidate with the most votes would prevail. So I would ask folks, you know, if they're seconding candidates or nominations, you know, if they're doing it because they want to discuss that, I would ask you to please indicate as such, so I can have an understanding of how this is going. So with that, if there's a...
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. McCrisky?
Madam Chair, just on your explanation, I can't see how 2 votes out of 4 would prevail if it was split on the other side.
If it was 2 to 2, then we would have a tie, and we would have to, you know, vote till we broke the tie. If it was 2 to 1, which is, again, that would be if for some reason there was nominations for each candidate that were seconded, and then the votes went that way. But
Okay, thank you.
2 votes would prevail. That's the only circumstance in which 2 votes would prevail. I was trying to do, you know, the prisoner's dilemma of scenarios here. That was the counsel I got. So just wanted to put that out there at the onset before we begin.
So,
Ms. Roberts?
yes, Madam Chair, I'm ready to make a nomination, please.
Okay.
Being the newest member of the board, I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to go first and just to start the discussion.
Okay.
I nominate Reggie Medeiros, and I don't know her personally, so her last name, I think I'll butcher it. Kowalski. And I can tell you why.
There's on the nomination.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. All right. Are there any additional nominations?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. McCrisky.
I nominate Mrs. Carrara.
I will second for discussion.
Okay. All right. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll open it up for discussion on the nominations. We have Reggie Medeiros Kowalski nominated and Stephanie Carrara. And I'll just go through the board members here, beginning with Ms. Roberts.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I thought her interview came across very professional. She was innovative. She actually has the experience with a breadth of knowledge. Her PowerPoint presentation answered the questions that were on the assessment that the board agreed that we were in need of. She talked about modernization of the department. She talked about using tools that we currently have. She was rated second highest from the external screening committee. And I rated her high on her interview as well, based on knowledge, based on content, based on innovation and creativity. And those are just some of the things just to get the conversation started.
Thank you, Ms. Roderick. Mr. McCrisky?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I did the same reasons. I guess we just have different people we support. I think to me it was really a simple decision, is that Mrs. Carrara has been in the clerk's office since 2009 and been doing the job every day and serving as the interim since 2019. She's the only candidate that has the experience in the office, and it's great to have good experience. I know I can't say a bad word about the other two candidates. They are very good in their fields. But we have two that are certified municipal clerks, one having experience since 2009. In my opinion, any clerk that comes to work in that position should have a contract with measurable goals and a measuring process as well as part of that, so that we can be sure that any person coming to work in that position meets the expectations of the board, as well as the working relationship with the town manager, because that's who they will work with. So I think for me, it's a very easy decision. I know that in my scoring was a little bit different than looking at the assessment people as well. And it's obvious by their scoring, it's definitely different than I have, but it's just, to me, I think we have a candidate that's doing the job. If there's any areas that we feel that could be improved, I know that we did a recent study. I think that's up to the chair or her designee, working with the town manager to come up with an improvement plan to get the job done. So I think with the credentials Mrs. Carrara has in her clerk experience, as well as being in that office and since 2009, as well as running the office with the town manager during her term as interim town manager since 2019, sets her apart in my book as of the candidates, and that's why I'll be voting for her.
Thank you, Mr. McCrisky. Mr. O'Regan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think between interims and permanent appointees, this will be, I know Joe has more than I do, but I think this will be my 6th appointment of a permanent or interim town clerk. Everything that's been said about both candidates, I agree with, so I won't belabor the point, and I just want to add for Mr. Golden that I think all 3 of these candidates could serve the town well in that department. Each of them would bring a different set of skills and a different set of strengths. I think although Mr. Golden did not come to us with experience as a town clerk, he certainly shows the capacity, energy, and drive to get indoctrinated. But looking at the town's perspective, we have 2 internal candidates who would move into that position more easily for the town. Looking back at this being the 6th time, I'm going to make an overall observation about the clerk's office, not meaning this as anything but an observation and not a criticism. The past practice has been for the board to make an appointment as issues come up, as ways to make things better might come up. They're dealt with, but in a systematic way of dealing with the office and its functioning, we could do better. In the fall, when we were working on this, I know I voiced my concern about terms or contracts for this and all board appointments for a reason of having some more clarity. And so I think that's important. I think that what we've gotten out of this process, and those of us on the board looking at what's going on with admiration for what the interim has done during the pandemic and all of the supports that have gone into the clerk's office functioning during the pandemic across town government, we've been able to see some of the effects over the past periods of time where town clerk appointments have been made, but the select board or board of selectmen has not been so active in setting goals, standards, uh, and supervision. I think in this appointment, it will be important to make clear as a board appointment what's expected of whoever gets the appointment through a contract with goals, and then as the contract works through, with formal assessment of this. I think the correct thing is for every select board appointment to be done that way. The unfortunate thing is that triggers open meeting law complexities, but we'll have to deal with it. I also been approaching this with the two internal candidates, each of whom I think could take this office as a permanent position and make it work well. So one of the things I've tumbled to over the course of my time on the board is a belief that the function of this board really, especially with appointments, is to find a way to make everybody who volunteers or works for the town to succeed. So looking at the sets of skills, and as we observed in the interviews, we have two very dedicated servants to the town, both of whom offer great ability to serve the town, both of whom seeking one position that only one can get appointed to. And I think that's unfortunate. I think for what the town needs and what the work has been done and the amount of confidence because of the performance, that I would support Mrs. Carrara for the appointment. But I also believe in listening to how this has been described, that how we support her view for the future and how we support what we've heard for the needs of the department in the backup work we've received in the observations we've made, or filling the position that is open is also critical, so that she gets the full team that she needs and the town needs to make that work. But I'm not done, because after this, if the chair will recognize me, I have a motion I'd like to make concerning Mrs. Kowalczewski, I hope, and I'm sorry, because there are a host of things she can do for the town that I heard and have witnessed from watching her. And in this process, I think there is definite merit to having her both advance professionally and be recognized for the skills that she could bring for the town, in line with what she articulated, because I agree with Ms. Roberts. She displayed professionalism, experience, a knowledge of using tools across town systems. I've heard from people in the community great respect for her ability to help with folks who are challenged with language. I mean, English in the town hall, and a desire to do that. So I'd like to address that. But to conclude on Mrs. Carrara, I don't think anybody could come away from her interview without being deeply impressed by her detailed knowledge of the day-to-day functioning of the town clerk's office. And especially in this difficult time, but also because of the changes going on in the town, we need to have that office continue uninterrupted. She's got the dedication, she's got the commitment, she's got the drive, she's got the knowledge. And so that's, in a nutshell, where I come out. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Regan. I mean, I think a lot of what everyone said is probably what most of us have been thinking and ruminating on over the weekend, the last several days. For me, the appointment, when thinking about who to appoint for this position, what I have in mind is the Stoughton 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, not just the Stoughton tomorrow or the Stoughton last year. And I don't doubt that either candidate that we've nominated here tonight, quite frankly, even Mr. Golden, who showed great enthusiasm, and I believe he'll be a great asset to the town government wherever he lands. I appreciate his application for this position. Unfortunately, it is a little nuanced and specialized with the elections and a lot of the laws that I think the experience of the other candidates kind of outweighs that. But I don't doubt that there's a community out there that could really use him. So encourage him to keep applying. But for me, I believe that both of our two nominated candidates here can and will strive to reach that Stoughton of 5, 10, 15 years in the future, but it's going to take the direction of this board to steer them there. And that is going to require clear goals, clear performance standards, just as we've done with the manager's contract, police chief's contract. I see us doing that again with this position. There isn't a clear way to address, the concerns of the office that were raised in that report, as well as where we want to see this office in the future. Then that individual is not going to have any guidance and be able to achieve it. So it's definitely more of a burden on this board to steer the ship in the right direction. And then I think both are completely capable of doing that. One major factor for me that is a strong consideration is the election experience. That is one of the primary and one of the most important parts of this position. And I had talked to a clerk about town clerk positions, and they made a remark: if there is a clerk who can make it through 2020, then you want to hire that person. 2020 was extremely unique, but I don't see the election process changing back to the old ways, but probably moving forward for more of these mail-in ballots, more of this absentee ballot, advanced voting. We have local elections, national, state primaries, and it's such a critical core part of the position that it's hard to ignore, especially when you have an incumbent candidate, the interim candidate, who has so much experience running elections. I think Reggie has a phenomenal skill set that the town needs to expand and take advantage of. I don't doubt that she would succeed as the clerk, but I think she'd probably even provide an even better service to cross-departmental things. Thinking about how, the IT director has sort of expanded her role because she has that operations mindset. I think Reggie has a very similar set of skills that would lend itself to the town beyond her current position and even beyond the sort of niche position of the clerk's office. And I think everybody's kind of highlighted and described that, but this isn't an easy decision, and I really do put the burden on this board to ensure that the person that we select tonight is successful. That's our job, and with that, I'll also be supporting Ms. Carrara for the position. Ms. Roberts?
Based on this new information, I would like to change my nomination. That's for consensus and to support the majority vote. I also was very much in favor of the promotion for Miss Reggie. So I changed my nomination to support Ms. Carrera.
I changed my second.
All right, so I think for the record's sake, would anybody like to make a motion for appointment for the town clerk position, understanding that there's only one candidate nominated?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to appoint Stephanie Carrara as town clerk, subject to reaching a mutually agreeable employment agreement.
I
Second.
will second that.
All right. Is there any additional question on this? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote on the motion. Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. McCrisky?
Yes.
Mr. O'Regan?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. KB abstains. Motion passes 4-0.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes, Mr. O'Regan?
I move, if you will accept it, that the board designate the chair and Ms. Roberts as negotiators with the prospective new town clerk in consultation with the town manager.
Second.
Discussion? I am willing to do that. Ms. Roberts?
Yes, I am willing to do that. Thank you.
All right. On the motion, is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. McCrisky?
Yes.
Mr. O'Regan?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 4-0 with one abstention. Or recusal, rather. Excuse me. All right. Mr. O'Regan,
Sorry to bore you. I'm running out of motion time, so I have to use it all up. Madam Chair, I move that the board recommend to the town manager that the role of Mrs. Kowalczewski in town government be reviewed, and that the scope of her duties and responsibilities and opportunities to serve the town be redefined commensurate with her abilities and experience, and those to include facilitating operations among the town departments, improving outreach among communities who are not English speakers as a first language, and especially focusing on innovation and technology across the town departments.
motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Open it up for discussion. Mr. McCrisky?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't believe that motion is in order, whereas the board does not have the authority over the paid employees of the town. Therefore, I don't believe that we can make a motion to instruct the town manager to do anything that the town charter clearly states is her authority to conduct on behalf of the townspeople. So we cannot be telling her to do what. The town charter is very clear that she has the right to fire, hire, reassign, abolish departments, create departments in the workforce thereof. So I don't think the motion is in order at this time.
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Sure, Mr. O'Regan.
I was careful, out of respect for the point Mr. McCrisky raises, to phrase it not as an instruction or direction, but as a recommendation to the manager, which the manager is free to accept or not act on.
Yeah,
Madam Chair?
sure, Mr. McCrisky.
Just with that, I think the town manager has taken the consensus in the past, which, I don't think a motion would be warranted, but definitely, if that was the consensus of the board, because it would add to that consensus that Mr. Golden be looked at, when the town manager is looking to fill a position, because he has impeccable credentials, and I believe, as well as spoken earlier, he would be an asset to the town. But I don't think we need a motion to do that, but we could ask the town manager to take our consensus. I think that would be a better way of accomplishing that goal that Mr. O'Regan would like to do.
Okay. Ms. Roberts, sure.
Yes, could that be another motion, please? Helpful to keep the direction, or the recommendation, not direction, I'm sorry, the recommendation for Ms. Medeiros Kowalski separate from Mr. Golden.
Yeah, I think Mr. McCrisky's point, though, is that neither of these things need to be made through formal motion, because typically when we request information of the manager to report back to the board, we do it by consensus and we don't make a formal motion and vote.
And Madam Chair, may I just, I'm sorry to play tennis like this, but I think given all that is involved by an applicant through a public interview process that I would say both candidates did, I don't think it is at all prohibited or restricted for the board to make a recommendation to the manager. There's no reason why we can't take a vote on it out of respect for the basic fact of putting yourself out there in a public setting.
That's true.
In a public setting through 2 interviews. And as we've been experiencing, quite a bit of activity in bringing forward to the board all of the strengths each makes, that if there is a case for an exception to the practice of this board to just do by consensus, this is it. And the other thing it will show to the aspects of the community who we've all heard from, that there is a great sense of commitment to Mrs. Carrera to be town clerk. There's also a great sense of commitment that there are ways the board should recognize for Mrs. Kowalczewski to be of greater service to the town. I think if there's a chance and an opportunity or a need to depart from past practice, this is it. That's why I made the motion.
I'm okay with the recommendation and hearing from the manager on kind of report basis for potential reorg or whatever it may be, restructuring. So I'm fine with the motion as is. I think Mr. McCrisky raised his hand. Dr. Grimm,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out the charter is very clear. This motion, if it would be challenged legally, I don't think it's going to stand up. I understand the spirit of the motion, but the charter is very clear. We cannot instruct the manager to do anything regarding paid employees. I mean, if anybody wants to break out the charter now and read it, it's very clear. It is her sole responsibility. I have the utmost trust in the town manager to do what's in the best interest of the town. She has shared some of those thoughts with us as we've moved through this process. And I want to trust her to do her job in accordance with the town charter. This motion, I don't think it's a legal motion to make. I think we're stepping outside our authority as defined in the town charter. And I won't be voting for it, and I would encourage my colleagues not to vote it in the form of a motion. If we want to do a consensus, which I think we're pretty much done now, and I would not disagree with what my colleagues have said during this process, it's just that we don't have the legal right to make a motion to instruct the town manager to do this. This is the problem we've had with town managers in the past, is that people try to micromanage what the town manager will do. This may not be as egregious as that of micromanaging, but it sure doesn't meet the terms of the charter.
So,
hold on, Ms. Roberts. Dr. Grimm, you had unmuted.
Yeah, and regardless of how you go with motion of consensus, I will say, just to speak to the spirit of what we're talking about here, in many ways that's already started, so it's nice to hear that the board would support, even if it's through a consensus, a retitling for Reggie, if we will, a title that better actually represents what she already is doing. Many of these things she's doing. She coordinates all of my cross-training of staff. She coordinates the front desk. She coordinates a whole host of operations for me, in addition to functions like workers' comp, employee benefits, assists in all sorts of things that certainly cross the spectrum of more than what her title reflects. So regardless of how you decide to go, and I absolutely appreciate Mr. McCrisky's point. I also understand that sometimes a vote, if it's not actually to take a formal action, but a vote of consensus, if you will, whichever way you go, I certainly concur. There are things she's already doing, and there are more things I would love to have Reggie do. And I think things like the outreach with the community, she already does it again informally. It would be nice to formalize that a bit and at least recognize it in a better way for her than her current title reflects, because professionally, from a standpoint of career growth, nothing wrong with her title. I love that she's my executive assistant, but she really does do much more than a traditional executive assistant would do. And from a standpoint of logistics for the town in the long term, having someone in that position, if Reggie were to ever leave, rehiring her, an executive assistant, I would not be able to bring somebody in who could do what she does. The salary wouldn't be right for just an executive assistant. So really, she is mistitled. And I would love to offer her something more or more representative of the work that she does. And it's certainly a hope that I've had, as Mr. McCrisky pointed out. It's sort of been what I've kind of a direction I've wanted to go right along, because I think that's she's an underutilized talent in town hall.
Dr. Dunn. Ms. Roberts?
No additional question, Madam Chair. I'm all set. Thank you.
So I believe the motion is a recommendation to the town manager to look into this, as I see it's kind of formalizing the consensus that we've all kind of come to. So in that spirit, I understand the motion, and there's no additional discussion. I will call for a vote on it. On the motion made, Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. McCrisky?
Standing up for the terms of the town charter? No.
Mr. O'Regan?
That's right. Very funny, isn't it?
Yes.
Sorry, what was that? Mr. McCrisky, did you make a comment?
No, I don't think I did, Madam Chairman. I was just,
Okay. Mr. O'Regan?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Passes 3-1 and 1 recusal. All right. Is there anything else on this item number 5, town clerk appointment?
Can I just, Madam Chair, thank Mr. Golden once again and ask him to remember us and ask that the manager keep him in mind.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I'll just also thank Reggie for her application, and I hope that we can continue to harness her talents in Town Hall in a greater capacity, and also congratulate Ms. Carrara and thank her for her work as the interim over the last several months and her work in the department since 2009, and I look forward to having you as our official town clerk moving forward. So, congratulations.
Yay!
All right. Next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. We have item A, payroll and bill warrants and any other documents to come before the meeting. And item B, ratification of intermunicipal agreement with the town of Avon regarding on-call animal control officer coverage. Would anybody like to pull any of the items from the consent agenda? Okay. Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded on the consent agenda. Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. McCrisky?
yes.
Mr. O'Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We do have 2 executive session items tonight to approve our executive session minutes of December 9th, 2021, and to discuss the strategy with respect to negotiations with non-union personnel pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, the town clerk. Make a finding that it's against the town litigating and negotiating position to discuss these items in open session, and therefore they should be discussed in executive session. We're moving to enter into executive session.
So made.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
On the motion, Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. McCrisky?
Yes.
Mr. O'Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We'll adjourn from the executive session and will not return to open session. Next meeting of the board is tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. We'll see you there. Thank you.